All right, good morning, everyone. We just had some time to chat and introduce ourselves, and now we're ready to introduce Tatiana. So, Tatiana Daughtery Coffman is a certified perinatal mental health therapist and international board certified lactation consultant at her private practice, Northstar Wellness, in downtown Gilbert. Her mission is to be a comforting guide and support her clients as they work through whatever challenges they are experiencing. She empowers people to find their own sources of strength and inspiration so they can feel a renewed sense of well-being and peace. Welcome, Tatiana. We're so happy to have you here with us today.
Thank you, Jenny. I'm so glad to be here with you guys. This is exciting.
Yeah.
So thank you for that introduction. You kind of already let everybody know who I am. I'm excited to be here and talk to you guys today about perinatal mood and anxiety disorders. So like depression, anxiety, and some other things that we'll talk about. But to answer the question today, I got to listen to everybody else's responses and I loved hearing all those. And there were definitely a lot that I was like nodding my head at, like, yeah, those are all good memories. And I think the thing that stands out to me the most though is like that, like you're holding them, or maybe they're in the sling or the baby carrier, and like you can, or they're nursing, or you're feeding them, and they kind of like look up at you, and like there's just that like gaze that they give you of like, I love you, mom, And I love that. I love that. And I do miss that, especially now that my kids are a little old.
Yeah, they don't give you that gaze quite in the same way as they get older.
Not quite the same. They still do tell me they love me, and I appreciate that. I'll take it. So do you want me just to like jump right into it, or are there, one thing I want to share with you guys is I'm super informal. So, this is a topic near and dear to my heart. I could probably talk all day about, about this subject, but I know we have, limited time. So Sarah and Jenny, if you can help me with that, because like I said, I might be like a little time blind and not be noticing where we are with time. And then if there's questions, right, that people have, let me know, because I welcome them. It doesn't need to, I want this to be a discussion today. I don't think I just need to sit here and talk you guys' ears off. So if you've got questions for me, absolutely, I welcome them. Like Jenny said, and Sarah, if there's something that you want to ask, but you don't want to put it live, no big deal. We can talk about it later. But the first thing I wanted to just start off with is kind of the basics and what are perinatal mood and anxiety disorders? And I'm going to start with the word perinatal, because that's a word that you might see a lot. Sometimes we also talk about like maternal mental health or perinatal mental health, but perinatal is a word that it's a little bit more broad than just postpartum, because that's, if there's one thing that I want you all to know, it's that none of this stuff happens exclusively postpartum. And some of you guys listening today, you might know that from personal experience. But I talk with a lot of people who didn't know that, and it took them by surprise that they could be experiencing some changes in how they were feeling, either before they got pregnant or while they were trying to get pregnant, during pregnancy, and then after. And then even the word postpartum gets defined different ways by different people. Some people think about, oh, that's just like the first few weeks after I give birth. I go in for my 6-week, OB visit postpartum, and then I'm cleared, I'm good, right? And then some people think, oh, it's like maybe the first few months after I have a baby. But technically we look at it and say, it's at least the first year. But me and a lot of other professionals would say it can show up for years after you have a baby. And when I see that happening, it's usually it was maybe rooted in stuff that happened earlier on that just wasn't identified, or there weren't resources available to help with it. And now you could be with a child that's not a newborn anymore, and maybe struggling with some of the things we're going to talk about today, and you go, oh, could that be a postpartum depression or something? And it could be. So my goal today is to kind of share with you guys a little bit about what that can look like, what some of those symptoms are that you might want to look out for. I noticed one of our participants today mentioned that, like, hey, there are some good times, so that makes it a little tricky for me to know, am I depressed? And this is a unique time period in our lives, you know, when we are in this perinatal time. Either we're working on having a family, maybe we're pregnant, maybe we've had a child, and the symptoms of depression and anxiety might show up or be experienced in some different ways that could be unexpected. So hopefully, I don't remember who it was that said that. I'm so sorry, but hopefully our discussion today kind of helps, you know, clarify some of that. So perinatal mood and anxiety disorders that's kind of like a general term that gets used to describe depression, anxiety. It can also include post-traumatic stress. So like PTSD-like symptoms, and I definitely want to talk about that today. There can be some other things that can manifest along with anxiety. We can also see things that are like OCD-like symptoms. So we call that postpartum OCD, and I'll describe more about what that is. And then we have some of the ones that I often get asked about. I don't know about Jenny or Sarah, but postpartum psychosis and a bipolar disorder. Sometimes you hear about those things on the news, you know, and things like that when we hear some big stories that happen. And I'd like to maybe just address that real quick, because one of the questions that parents who are experiencing some changes in how they're feeling, maybe they're having some thoughts that are worrying them, oftentimes they'll ask me that, am I experiencing psychosis? So again, we'll break all that down today a little bit and just kind of give a brief overview of what those things are, what you can look for in that. But let's start with anxiety, because I think that, and that will lead me into some of the other things that we just talked about. But as much as you guys hear about postpartum depression out there, a lot of people are more familiar with that. But what we see even more than depression is anxiety. And anxiety can manifest in different ways for different people, but some ways that it can manifest is a sense of, like, a physical sense of something's not right, you know, or a physical feeling in your body, like a tight chest, or like a pressure on your chest, or you know, saying like, I feel like it's hard to breathe, or I feel like, you know, I'm having heart palpitations, or something like that. So there can be kind of these physical symptoms that might come up with it. It can also show up as a lot of worry, a lot of times focused on the baby. And so along with this worry, you know, we can get what we call intrusive thoughts. And intrusive thoughts are kind of what they sound like. they're thoughts that we have that are kind of terrifying. You know, they're not wanted. We're not like, oh, let me sit there and dwell on this, you know, scary thing that I think might happen. Usually when these intrusive thoughts happen, we're like, oh my gosh, go away. I don't want to think about that. It's something that really disturbs us. And I want to first of all kind of give you guys a little information about that. They did a study on that, and they found that at least I'd be almost willing to bet this number is going to be higher, you know, but at least 80% of new parents experience intrusive thoughts to some extent. So if this is you, if you're like, yeah, I've had some weird thoughts before, or I've had some thoughts that left me going like, why was I thinking about that? You know, you're not alone. You're not alone. I will raise my hand and say, absolutely, that's something I've experienced too.
Me too.
Anybody else? Anybody else have them? Yeah. Yep, you're not alone. I'll share with you guys an example. We got a thumbs up. Yep. Okay, see? We're not alone. Yay. That's the takeaway for today. I hope you guys know is that, first of all, this stuff happens. It happens to a lot of people. I mean, the numbers are like 1 in 5 women experience some sort of depression or anxiety or some sort of mood change and mood disorder during the perinatal time, and it affects men as well, you know. So it's parents in general can be experiencing these things, and you are not alone. And there's treatment, you know, you don't have to suffer alone with it. But these scary intrusive thoughts are often the ones that get people worried. They go, oh my gosh, if I'm thinking like something bad might happen to my baby, you know, does that mean that I might do something bad to my baby, or I might hurt my baby somehow? And that is one of the big distinguishing factors that we use when we're looking at, is this postpartum anxiety or maybe a postpartum OCD, versus something like psychosis, where the person is experiencing things that are not in touch with reality, and they're maybe hearing things or seeing things or having thoughts, but those thoughts don't disturb them. So can you guys hear the difference there? Disturbing thoughts versus thoughts that would normally be disturbing but aren't, you know. So whenever someone tells me I'm having these thoughts and they're really worrying me, and does that mean that, you know, I'm going to do something bad? That means you're actually at very low risk for that, because they're disturbing you and you're talking about it. Sometimes people kind of keep these things to themselves because they think, oh, I don't want to share how I'm feeling with other people. You know, are they going to judge me for it? Or, you know, are they going to understand? And so, yeah, you guys are not alone. When my oldest was a baby, here's an example, and it's okay. I'm going to tell you guys, I can laugh at this now. So it's okay if you laugh at it. It's a little bit of a silly example of what this can look like. But I would have very vivid thoughts about, what if a lion jumped through my bedroom window and tried to get my baby? In Chandler, Arizona. And
Okay.
so, right. I mean, yeah, we have lions, you know, walking around all over the place. But, you know, I would lay awake at night kind of playing out these scenarios in my mind about, like, what would I do if this happened? And what would, you know, how would I protect my baby? Well, this is the good news, is distressing as thoughts like that can be, we have them for a reason. You know, anxiety is really our brain's way of trying to keep us safe. You know, it's a mechanism that human beings have developed, and it is a way of, like, perceiving danger, anticipating danger, and then trying to keep us safe. And when we become parents, our children become extensions of ourselves, and we want to keep them safe too. So I often say that we are like, you know, cave mamas, you know, like our brains are functioning at that level, thinking about, like, what if a lion comes, right? What am I going to do? Even if in our modern world, that is not necessarily a risk that we would expect to have. So again, this is normal. This is normal if you have these kinds of things happen. But those are some different ways that the anxiety can kind of show up. Now, when it starts looking more like OCD is when we have intrusive thoughts that like, sometimes we have an intrusive thought like the lion, but I can go, that's a weird thought. Shrug my shoulders and move on from it. It doesn't consume me. It doesn't, like, change anything about the way I'm living. It doesn't have a negative impact on my life. And then there's intrusive thoughts that won't let up and we can't let go of. And they're replaying over and over and over again. And they feel like they're taking something away from us. They are intruding in a negative way in our life. That would be what we would label the obsessive part of obsessive compulsive disorder. Because a lot of people hear OCD and they think, oh, that's like people who, like, have to wash their hands a lot of times or something like that. But OCD starts with, whether it's in the perinatal time or not, involves an intrusive thought or an obsessive thought that is really disturbing. And then that can lead to doing or avoiding doing certain things as a means to prevent that scary thought from happening. And those compulsions, those things that we do or avoid doing because of the scary thought, or to try to control for that scary thought, can be something that we can see visually, like I got to wash the bottles, 15 times before I can give it to my baby, kind of thing. Or it could be something that no one else can see because it's happening internally. It's like, I got to reassure myself all over and over and over again that I'm safe, that everything's okay. Or I've got to Google everything to reassure myself that everything's okay, or things like that. So this is actually something I see a lot in my practice. And so if you're identifying with anything I'm describing, again, you're not alone. This is something that's very, very common. And there can be, different reasons why these things show up, which I'll get to in a minute. But that's just a little brief overview of some of this anxiety. And like I said, this stuff is way more common than depression. But I often see depression too, because, and it makes sense to me, I don't know about for you guys, but when we have high levels of anxiety and it's having a negative impact on our life, like we're not feeling like we can enjoy things, or we're not feeling like we can do things that we enjoy because of that anxiety, well, that can lead to depression, right? We're not really living a life that feels like full and meaningful. We're not able to experience joy. So they can come hand in hand, or they can come separately from each other. So you don't have to have both. You can have one or the other. Now, depression, a lot of times, oh, sorry.
No, I just wanted to interject briefly, because in the chat, someone had commented her husband too has had, similar symptoms as far as, the anxiety and things like that in the postpartum period. And I just wanted to make sure that we touched on that, because that can be something that is that we don't often think about for the partner.
Yep, that's right. Absolutely. The stats are like, and again, these can change because we have to gather the information, right, before we really know what the numbers are. But current numbers are estimating at least 1 in 10 fathers are experiencing a form of perinatal mood or anxiety disorder. But even if it doesn't have the significant negative impact on your life of some of these like criteria, that might mean like, oh yeah, like we really need to get some support for this. All parents pretty much, are going to experience some of this to some degree, right? We have worry thoughts that come. We want to keep our kids safe. We want to make sure everything's okay. So yeah, that's so important. Thank you for bringing that up, because this is not something that's unique to women. It's not, or mothers. Yeah. Depression was one thing I wanted to talk about too, because sometimes people think about depression and kind of maybe have a picture in their mind of what, a depressed person looks like. So I'm kind of curious for you guys, like when you think about depression, what are some of the symptoms that come to mind? Like, what are you imagining, that if you haven't experienced it before, that what it might look like?
I can say I used to think it was just sadness.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I agree. I used to think it was like crying all the time, right? And
yeah.
I think for me, it ended up being really angry.
Okay, there we go. Exactly. Thank you for sharing that.
In the chat, we have difficulty with executive functions, like doing the dishes. It interferes with being functional. Someone also says like a darkness covering everything with sadness or negativity. Brushing your teeth, any kind of self-care, and rageful outbursts. And so down that you can't get out of bed, or feeling inadequate as a mom.
Ooh, yeah. All of those,
right?
all of those are such good.
Guilt and shame.
I see that one. Guilt and shame.
Yeah.
Thank you, Tiffany. Yeah. Oh, you guys, you're so good. That's right. Thank you all for sharing that, because like Jenny and Sarah were sharing, it's more than just sadness. Sadness can be part of it, but oftentimes people will say, I'm not sad. I'm freaking furious. I'm angry. like Sarah, like you said, rage. That can be a sign. And then the guilt and shame, I think those are so often unknown or overlooked symptoms of depression. Yeah, people aren't putting those together, that that might mean that I'm experiencing some depression. Oh, I see a question coming in. Is rage a symptom of PPD or PPA? Okay, good question. It could be both. It could indicate it could indicate both. I would probably, as a therapist, I'd need to know more, right, about like what all's going on. But short answer would be it could be both. Because like we were saying earlier, you know, these two things can come together or overlap a lot, and the symptoms can overlap too. Yeah, self-criticism and fear. Ooh, yeah. So fear, like feeling kind of paralyzed, right? I often say to people, and this is one of the things, I'm just going to tell you guys, if anybody's ever told you, like, this is the kind of advice that people will get sometimes when they're having depression, like, well, you know, just like exercise. Eat healthier foods and you'll feel better, you know. But because of everything that you guys just so down, you can't get out of bed, feeling guilty, feeling inadequate, feeling terrified and fearful, fatigued. Yes, physical symptoms, right? It's not just emotional, it's like how it shows up physically. What I always say to that, as someone who has also experienced postpartum depression and anxiety, and depression and anxiety not during the perinatal time as well, doing sometimes even things that yes, those things could help, but doing those things when you're depressed can feel like saying to go take, you know, trying to take a walk outside, for example. I mean, it's a wonderful thing to do for yourself, but it can feel like you're trying to climb Mount Everest with a backpack full of bricks on your back to do it. And that's sometimes what gets misunderstood, you know, is that sometimes the things that help can seem simple, but they're not easy to implement when you're struggling with depression and anxiety. Tiffany also contributed that, you know, feeling disconnected from yourself or your partner. Yeah. Thank you for that, because I wanted to also touch on that today. One of the things that can show up during this time, this perinatal time, is a lot of shifts, a lot of adjustment and change. And that can contribute to some of these symptoms of depression and anxiety. So even if you wanted this baby desperately and planned for this, you know, to have a child, and had a lot of hopes and dreams for what it was going to be like to become a parent, the realities can really shake up a lot of things in people's lives. And so there can be a lot of strain in relationships. You're like having to renegotiate roles. It can also be a time where what I call like old stuff can come up. And so to get to one of the other PMADs, you know, perinatal mood and anxiety disorders that can show up, is post-traumatic stress disorder. And this is another thing that we see. So a lot of times we can be experiencing symptoms of depression and anxiety that are rooted in painful past experiences and stressful experiences, either in other times in our life or during the perinatal time. Perhaps there's been traumatic events that have happened in trying to get pregnant, maybe infertility treatments, maybe, you know, things that have happened during the pregnancy, maybe things that have happened during the birth. And so a lot of, and it can also be related to the effects of racism, sexism, different forms of discrimination throughout your life. You know, it's one of these interesting experiences, and sometimes deeply painful experiences, that we become parents, and all the stuff that we thought you know, maybe we'd healed from, or we thought that, you know, wasn't an issue for us, gets kind of brought up to the surface, and we feel like we're kind of reevaluating a lot of our experiences, and there can be a lot of intrusions that happen from trauma. So a lot of anxiety, again, like I mentioned earlier, what's anxiety? It's our brain's way of trying to keep us safe. Well, if you've ever experienced situations where you weren't safe, your brain is like doing its job, right? Trying to protect you, but it can put you in a state of hypervigilance, right? That makes living in the day-to-day, in the here and now, difficult. And so that's definitely something that I see too. And I'm seeing some comments that some of you guys have experienced that as well. And it can definitely lead, just to echo what one of the commenters said, it's let's see if I could find, sorry guys, I like had it in my eye and then I lost it, but yeah, basically just that, yeah, it can be this stuff that shows up and we might not expect it. You know, we might come into this experience like, oh, it's going to be blissful, you know, and it's not. So relationship changes, strain. One of the biggies of things that can also contribute to this stuff is sleep. You know, sleep is pretty fundamental, and it's hard to operate with all cylinders firing, right, when you're not getting the fundamentals of what you need met. So that's like enough food, right? And, you know, being well fed, well hydrated, getting enough sleep, like feeling safe in your environment. These are all kinds of like the bare bones basics of what we all need as human beings. And this is a really unique time period in our lives where the very thing we need the most is the thing that we are most deprived in, and is very hard to get. So, yeah, feel free to chime in and share if you guys have thoughts about that or questions about that, because I see that, and that's oftentimes part of treatment for these things is, let's look at those basics, right? We got to make sure your basics are being met before we can even look at anything else. And so getting creative sometimes, if possible, with how can we get you more sleep.
If I can, I just have to say, I think sleep is one of those foundations that makes the snowball even worse. You know, on the negative side of things, if you're not sleeping, it's harder to do all of the other things, and your body is going to be physically on red alert, and it's going to make you even more prone to being anxious about stuff. Like, I know if I don't get a good night's sleep, the next day I'm like up, down, left, right. I have no idea, you know. It's like I'm on one of those little kids spinny things, and I just can't function well. So I definitely think sleep is probably one of the root causes of, or what kind of spurns on some of these other symptoms. And you're right. I love what you said about it's this unique period in our lives where the thing we need the most is the hardest to get. And that's just spot on.
Yeah, thank you for sharing that, because I'm 100% in agreement with you. It really is. And when I'm talking to a parent who's struggling with something like this, that's one of the first questions I or other perinatal mental health therapists ask is like, let's talk about sleep and what do we have to do to get you more sleep? Let's negotiate that with your partner, with, you know, your living situation, how the baby's going to be taken care of and fed and all of these things, but it's so important. I'll share with you guys something that like I've carried with me for all the years that I've been a parent now. When my oldest was little, I was, you know, chronically sleep deprived. I was depressed. I was anxious. I remember saying to my own mom, Mom, you know, I'm so tired, you know, just like I'm so tired. And she said one of the most compassionate things, like, that has stuck with me for forever. She just looked at me with like tears in her eyes and she said, "Oh, honey, there's a reason why sleep deprivation is used as a form of torture." Right? I mean, if that's not the most legit thing, I don't know what is, you know, because like that's the that's the truth of it, right? Like when we are sleep deprived, that's well known, in different places where, that happens. Sleep deprivation is torture, and it does not great things to our mental state. So Joanne shared, that if you admit to being sleep deprived, everyone says just sleep train. And if you're not ready, your baby isn't ready, it adds a lot of pressure. So, thank you for sharing that. Right. And kind of going back to what Sarah and I were saying earlier, it's this wild time. Like, this is the thing I need the most, but it's the hardest thing to get. And there's no easy, straightforward answers to how to get it. And so I want to acknowledge that, because it's trouble. It's an issue. The other thing is healing from the birth. Even if you had a birth that you consider was like great, and you feel good about it, and and you feel physically you're feeling good, there's still a physical recovery that's happening. And I can't think, can you guys think of any other situations? I've tried to think of any other situation where you would have a major physical event happen. Maybe you have a surgery or something like that, and then immediately after they're like, here you go, here's a creature you have to keep alive 24/7, and like you're solely responsible for while you're healing from something really major. So that's another thing. We don't have a lot of, and that's why fourth trimester exists, right? We don't have a lot of cultural support for what parents need during this time. And all of that can combine. There's not like one thing we can point to that says, who's going to have a perinatal mood and anxiety disorder and what causes it. It's lots of factors that can come into play. Other things that can come into play are feeding difficulties. Sarah and Jenny, I know you feel me on this. I know they mentioned I'm also a lactation consultant and IBCLC, even though I'm not currently seeing clients in that capacity, but that's something that we all see a lot, whether you're breastfeeding or not. It's when there's feeding, again, that's a fundamental thing, right? We need to know that our babies can eat and they're getting what they need. And if there's any disruption in that, or a baby that has some medical needs, or has a NICU stay, all of these things can lead to, very, very stressful experiences that, that some people experience as traumatic, and that can heighten, the likelihood, that can increase the likelihood that a perinatal mood or anxiety disorder might manifest. So, so we've talked about sleep. How are we doing on time, guys, by the way? Because again, like I said, I could just keep chatting on and on and on about this.
We're doing great. I actually have a question in the chat. I wonder if you can address. So Lizette says, what about the anxiety that comes from sleeping and just thinking anything could happen to your baby, like while you're asleep?
Mm-hmm. So it's like anxiety is keeping you up because you're worried about falling asleep. Is that, I want to make, yeah, okay. I put that, that's again, a similar type of, that would be a form of how anxiety might be having a negative impact on your life, right? And I always say about things, this is something like as therapists, people say, how do I know if something's a problem for me? And I always say, it's not a problem unless it's a problem, So if you have that thought, but then you're able to go, and go to sleep anyway, and you don't feel like it has any negative impact on your life, then I might put that into a category of like, like I hate to use the word normal, but you know what I mean? Like an expected amount of anxiety. It's not having a negative impact on your life. You might not feel like you need to, quote, do anything about that. If on the other hand, you need sleep, but your anxiety about sleep is preventing you from getting sleep, that's when I'd encourage you to reach out to a professional and get some support with that. And that support could look like counseling, therapy. Medication can also be very, very helpful for a lot of parents who are experiencing this. And sometimes it's not an either or. Usually what the studies show is that the combination of therapy with medication helps you to feel better faster in a perinatal time. And most of us in this field are of that mindset that we want to get you feeling better as fast as possible, because when you have young babies at home that you're responsible for, that's important, right? Time is kind of the essence. And so that doesn't mean that everybody needs medication or that you should use medication. I just want to mention that's part of many people's treatment, and it's completely something to talk to a professional about if that's something that you want more information about. Yeah. So, okay. Someone asked about postnatal depletion as a contributing factor. Thank you for bringing that up. I also wanted to mention that there's a lot of things that can factor into all of this, including our nutritional status, sleep, like we've talked about, also the effects on our hormones. So I see a lot of women who are going through a postpartum thyroid disorders manifest during this time quite a bit. And that can very, very significantly impact mood, especially when we're talking about depression and anxiety and some of these kind of more like OCD like symptoms that can show up. So working with your provider I always recommend every single one of my clients gets lab work drawn and comprehensive lab work drawn by a doctor who is going to be comprehensive about looking at it. Because what we can sometimes see is that, there's what gets called like a normal range, but that might be different from an optimal range for people, or the numbers are not taking into consideration that this is a postpartum parent or a breastfeeding parent or anything like that might be going on that could also affect what those numbers need to be at for this person to be functioning optimally. So that's another contributing factor. Mm-hmm.
Are you seeing the chat, Tatiana? I want to make sure this is addressed.
Okay.
So, because this is a huge issue for so many, not just the gals who are typing this in the chat. The issue of wanting to seek support, but not feeling like you're going to be accepted in the truth of what is happening within you, not wanting to be judged, not wanting to be called out, not feeling safe getting that help. What would you suggest for moms or dads even who feel like they're in this position?
Thank you guys for bringing that up, because that is really important. And what I want to offer about that, I wish I had a way to guarantee you that you wouldn't run into an issue like that. And I can't. I'd be lying to you if I said that might not happen. So I want to validate that fear, because it's a fear for a reason. That's not irrational. I want to swear. Can I swear? That stuff has happened. I won't swear. That stuff has happened to people. Okay. So that's real. Things that can help, it doesn't mean it's a guarantee, but can help, is seeking out people who are specifically trained in this area. And, lots of people say that they do perinatal mental health or maternal mental health, but that's like added on to a long list of other things that they say that they're experts into, and that's not to say that they're not competent. But what I know is that, it's important for the person that you're seeing, if they're a therapist, if they're a doctor, that they understand that when you tell me I'm having XYZ scary thought about my baby, or I'm having intrusive thoughts about something happening to my baby, that I know the questions to ask, or that person knows the questions to ask to differentiate between being a risk and not being a risk. And then that's good, right? And like what we do with that. And so, that's important. And I think the number one thing that you can do is seek out people who are either certified in perinatal mental health, or really have a lot of training in that area and specialize in that area as much as possible. And there are some resources that can help you to locate providers like that. Locally and nationally, we have an organization called Postpartum Support International. postpartum.net, and we can share these resources with you guys too, but postpartum.net is the international website. So much good information there. If you want to know more about anything that we've talked about today, please go visit there. And there's a hotline that you can call or you can text to get connected to volunteers who will offer you support, peer support. They're not therapists and professionals, but they're going to offer you peer support and help get you connected with coordinators. Now, disclaimer, I'm one of the coordinators in Arizona, so if you reach out to them, you might get connected with me. But what we do as coordinators, oh darn, yeah, is help you connect with local resources, right? So we have resource lists, and you can actually find our Arizona resource list on psiarizona.org, which is the local chapter, Arizona chapter of Postpartum Support International. And we have a list on there. And yes, I'll be honest, sometimes it gets out of date and we have to go in there and update it. But anybody that gets listed on there, you know, has training in this area. And so that's a good start. On the main PSI, postpartum.net website, there's also like a find a provider place. And so people who, you know, have listed themselves there, you know, they've gone through training, maybe they're certified or whatever it might be, and they'll list themselves there. So you can find them there. PSI, Postpartum Support International, but PSI for short, also now offers a call line for prescribers. So let's say you can't get in to a prescriber for medication with somebody who knows what the heck they're talking about with this stuff, but you can get into your regular OB. Well, your OB or your psychiatrist who's not specialized in perinatal mood and anxiety disorders can call this PSI number to connect with a prescriber who is, and who can consult with them to help make sure that you're getting the medication treatment that you need. So those are some of the resources, not all, but those are some of the resources that are out there that can help you guys locate somebody who you can trust, because that's the number one thing with treatment, is to find somebody that you feel safe with, and that you know, and who you feel like you can trust and open up to them. Oh, I see somebody mentioning the pandemic. Can we talk about that too? Oh my gosh. You guys who've had babies this past year, I'm so sorry. So another part of all this is grief, okay? And that's not something we've touched on today, but and there can be grief for lots of different things that can come up, but since COVID was mentioned, I think that's a really good example of, there's a lot of loss. Not sometimes loss that we didn't anticipate, but we experienced nonetheless in the process of becoming parents. And there's the loss of, there's loss of maybe people, but there's also loss of expectations and hopes and dreams and relationships and the ability to connect with other people. You know, one of the number one things that makes a difference for anyone struggling with anything really, but since we're talking about this topic today with these things, is to know that you're not alone, and to be able to connect with other people who are in it with you or have gone through it and come out on the other side, so that you can experience some hope and some connection. And that's something that's been, it was already bad to begin with. It was already not enough of that. And it's been stripped away even more. And so, you know, I think that's really important to acknowledge for all of you guys who are parenting in a pandemic. You know, there's a lot of loss, a lot of isolation. I saw that word come up. So again, if you're feeling that, that might be a good time to, you know, join in. I'm so glad that you guys are here today, joining in on meetings like this, seeking out what opportunities you can to connect with others. If you feel like it's taking a toll on you and having, again, I always go back to, if it's having a negative impact on your life, or you just feel like you'd benefit from more support, go on to that PSI website and, you know, look for counselors or therapists in your area who who get this stuff, and can help. Yeah.
As a sidebar to this, I would love to, at the end of our time today, be able to hold space for one another, for those who want to. So I want to just maybe give 15 to 20 minutes, which is a little bit more than we typically give, but I feel like this flows very naturally out of this conversation and some of the things that have been brought up. So as long as that's all right with you, Tatiana, we would have about 5-ish more minutes, and then we can kind of shift into that. Would that be all right?
That was great.
Awesome.
That's perfect.
Okay. Sounds like we just need to love on each other today.
Yeah. And I think I've kind of just touched on some of the biggies, that are things to be aware of. But if you guys have any questions for me that we haven't touched on, I'm happy to answer them. And if we need to just move into, like you said, kind of loving on each other a little bit and holding space, we can do that too.
So I'm going to pop us off of Facebook Live. If there's anybody on Facebook who wants to join us, you're welcome to do that on Zoom, but I'm going to pop us off right now.